Welcome, fellow business brokers. I am so excited today because we have Andy Cagnetta with us. Andy is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, industry players in our industry. He is the CEO of Transworld, the largest business brokerage company in the world. He is the former IBBA chairman. He's the former BBF chairman. He still currently serves on the BBF board. He is on the board of BEEF, which is the Business Intermediary Education Fund. And he does a ton, and I mean a ton of stuff for his local community. He gives so much back, including, and probably what he's best known for with his charity work, which is Andy's Pasta Dinner. And Andy, I welcome you to the Let's Chat show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, my friend. It's great to be here and great to be with you. And we've worked a lot together for our community and for business brokerage. So it's nice. It's nice to talk to you about it.
You know, Andy, I'm proud to call you my friend, and I really am. You're a good guy. You're all the way around. I respect you in the industry, and I respect you as an individual.
Yeah,
So
same.
Andy, I just think your story is very interesting. Can you tell us about your personal journey from, how when you started with Transworld all the way up until now and where you sit today?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Northeast United States and I eventually met my wife and we were thinking of moving to Florida. She had grown up down in South Florida. So I had bought and sold a small little business in Hartford, Connecticut, not using a business broker because I didn't even know what one was. But the experience of buying and selling a business worked out for me. I had started some small businesses before that didn't really work out. And this one was a pasta shop, which kind of led me to the pasta dinner. But so we moved down to South Florida. I started looking to buy a business and I visited with a lot of business brokers. And Jim's been around for a while. I've been around for a long, long while. And, business brokers were a different breed back then. It was kind of, it was interesting people to meet with. Met with some good ones for sure. And then met with Transworld one day. And Transworld invited me to join the team as a salesperson because I didn't know what Florida wanted or needed. And I was scared to buy something. So, I joined Transworld and I did well. I sold 9 businesses in my first year. And, I had sold cell phones and guitars and pasta and lighting. And, I was intrigued by this business where, if you sold, a dozen things a year, you were a superhero, right? So I liked the business and I enjoyed working with entrepreneurs. And so 2 years into my stint at Transworld, I had the opportunity to buy it from Don and Bonnie Parrish, who were then retiring, and he had a long career with IBM. And so I bought the company, and we started to grow. And we grew throughout Florida, which was great. And then in 2010, I decided to try to grow nationally, and I took on a partner with the United Franchise Group, which we're still partners, and we together in a joint venture have launched Transworld Business Brokers, Transworld Business Advisors. See, I'm going back to the old name because I'm talking about history. So, Transworld Business Advisors nationally, and it's been a great run. It's been a very unique experience over the years, something different every day. So, it's been a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. And when you acquired Transworld, there was only one office in South Florida, right? That was it. You only had one office. And today, how
One
many
office in Fort
offices?
Lauderdale. There's about half a dozen of us, and one of my partners, Tom Jones, is still with me. 30 years later. So
Oh, I didn't know Tom Jones was one of the originals. That's awesome. So
he
one
is.
office, 6 agents. So what? How many offices now, and how many agents now with Transworld?
You know, we have about 250 offices around the world, depending on how you count them. But we have just about 200, little over 200 individual franchisees now, and there's over 900 people in the system right now, and it's a lot of businesses being sold. It's
Yeah,
a
it
lot of
is.
fun.
I got to tell you, I go to the IBBA conferences, Andy, and I know Transworld. You guys have your conferences right before that, and seeing everybody in the Transworld shirts, it's pretty impressive, very impressive. Andy, you've done a great job. So what
Thanks, man. Thank you.
philosophies have you followed that has allowed Transworld to grow as big and as quickly as you guys have? Because you did this all
One of
this
my
in a 30-year
philosophies.
period of time, right, Andy? You did this all in about a 30-year period of time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
One of my philosophies is, I'm here to help people, right? So whether it be my agents, that work for us, my job is to give people the tools to succeed, and we want to help them. So internally in Transworld, my job is, I always felt, was to give people the best tools they can get, whether it's training, whether it's vendors, whether it's forums, whether it's memberships in associations. We're going to do everything we can to be the best internally, and then externally, sort of the same thing. I want to be a trusted advisor in my community, and that means doing the right thing. And a lot of times, as you know, in business brokerage, we don't always get to make money off of our transactions. We'll talk to a
Mhm.
lot of people. We help them in business. We give them advice. Sometimes they do their own deals. Sometimes a buyer goes off and buys a business somewhere else. But if we're always, honest and forthcoming and full disclosure and doing good deals, as I say, for good people, you know, the 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 good deals are going to come to you, and you're going to do plenty of deals. And that's why I think we have such a great business brokerage community, because we all realize how interconnected we are, and how we could really, if we all come together, we could really work and multiply the amount of businesses that are being sold.
And you were talking about giving back, and I one thing that I've noticed, and one thing I admire about you, Andy, is I've had the pleasure of working with you on the BBF state board now for, I don't know, almost 10 years, and you really do look out for the best interest of the BBF, the industry as a whole. And I've seen you sometimes, push things across that maybe is not in the best interest of Trans World, but is best in the best interest of the BBF and the industry as a whole. So kudos to you. And you
Thank you.
stand by what you say. It's not empty words on your part. Andy, I got to go back to what you were saying about when you first became a business broker back in the '90s, and you were talking about the brokers back then. I remember that, and you don't have to elaborate on that, but I remember when I first got in the industry, so many brokers. I would show up for meetings, and brokers from other companies, and they'd be wearing shorts and Hawaiian shirts with big gold chains, and it looked more like a Florida car used salesperson type of atmosphere. And today, the profession is just completely different. And people like you and other people in our industry, we just elevated the industry so much more professional, so much more technical knowledge you must have, the way you dress, I mean, the way you present yourself, to the knowledge you have to have. It's just night and day almost, right?
Yeah, I think technology has sort of flattened the playing field a lot, right? So buyers have access to information now, sellers have access to information. So you really have to provide a service, and you have to provide, you have to help the deal along, and you have to be known. There's so many ways to find people these days and find out if they're not for real, and certainly understand what a normal commission could be and what the normal valuations are. So I think, through that education, and, I have to hand it to those. So I'm going to give some kudos to the old business brokers, right? So while they were dressing in their, and you described it, and sometimes I say it was like being in a used car lot with these guys. But what they did was groundbreaking in the fact that they decided to work together, and they decided to
Yes.
share their listings. And this was not done, as you know and I know, across the United States. This was a Florida thing, and they got together, very forward thinking, and they came together and they decided to co-broke, and it created a marketplace that we have in Florida that's really still just barely, not like I don't think any other state really has a marketplace like we do. We're getting there, but so I think they had the foresight to do something extraordinary which really kind of raised the bar of everything, right? Increased transparency. Again, like you said, I give back, but to our business brokerage community, but I do it, somewhat selfishly because I want the whole thing to preserve itself, and I do want people to continue to work together, and you do that too.
Yeah, yeah, and that is huge what they did, and they came together and they started doing the co-brokering here in Florida. And for those of you guys who are listening, Florida is the only state that has a co-brokering association, and it's actually set up just for co-brokering, and it's been transformational for Florida. Florida is one of the leading states, I think the leading state in business, in the business brokerage industry. And we sell more businesses here in the state of Florida than anywhere, and it's a direct result of that co-brokering. And Andy, I know you promote co-brokering not just in the state of Florida, but I talk to a lot of I talk to agents all over the country, and I talk to a lot of Transworld agents all over the country, and they are all for co-brokering, which is very unusual because once you step outside of the state of Florida, usually people aren't so pro co-brokering, as we are in Florida. But the Transworld agents always seem to be very pro co-brokering, even the ones outside of the state of Florida, everyone that I've talked to. You guys are promoting that, right? Within
Yeah,
your organization?
yeah, we are, and yeah, I do have to prod people every now and then, and there are licensing laws that get in the way of sometimes, but for the most part, I always tell this to not only Transworld folks, but to everybody in our industry that there will be a marketplace for buying and selling a business. And we could either be a part of that or, get run over, much like the taxi drivers got run over by Uber. So,
Hmm.
literally and figuratively. So I do think that it's very important that we move in that direction, that we give people the opportunity to see all the businesses for sale. But, we started talking before we started, the future of business brokerage. I think it's a great future. And I think one of the reasons for it is eventually, people are going to be matched up with content. And that's going to be through AI and data and things like that. And I think the listings are the content, right? And I think that we're going to be connected directly and interconnected. And I think we're going to have to continue to work together.
Right, right. And at the end of the day, like we know, it's the best interest of the buyer, the best interest of the seller, and it's the best interest of the broker. So yeah, I look at it, Andy. I'm not, a tech expert. I try to stay up on top of what's going on, but just using simple tools like Chat GPT, which is just a little bit of what we're going to see over the next few years. The internet as we know it today, in my opinion, is not going to be the way it is and going to be in 10 years. What are you seeing? What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years in our industry? And how can us brokers, um, what can we do to stay relevant or even become more important in the process?
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is I think we're going to get away from that traditional searching to buy a business or searching to grow your company through acquisition, through having to actually search, right? So I think the days of keyboards are just about over. That people, our kids will say, what is that? It's the old
Yeah.
abacus. I mean, people are not going to know what a keyboard was, because you're going to be able to talk to your phone, which you can do now, but maybe not as seamlessly as you would want to be. But you're going to be able to look at the wall, look at your glasses, shout out to the sky that you want to buy a business or you want to grow your business, and you are going to be matched up automatically with people that may have businesses for sale or intermediaries like us that can help that process. And so I think that is going to be our future in the near future. And I think, the listings or the relationships with the sellers are still going to be, that's the content, right? That's what people are looking for. And I still think there's going to be, at least in the next 10 years or so, there's going to be so much of this activity that just blossoms that I'm almost afraid there's not enough of us. with the knowledge of guiding people through this process. And I think with technology, you know, the idea that we do a dozen deals a year and you're good at this, I think with technology, we'll be able to touch many more deals, and perhaps we'll be able to, leverage ourselves to be doing 50, 60, 100 deals a year, and working the system um, in some sort of exchange or some sort of uh, place where people go to buy businesses, or it just, some system that makes it happen, like the NASDAQ, like the stock market, with something that, and it's interesting you say, good for the buyer, good for the seller, good for the broker with co-brokering. It might eventually become mandatory. I mean, it might become to the point where, almost like home selling, where, they're trying to protect the consumer and make sure that everybody has equal access, or, at least access to the marketplace. So I think we're going to see some changes like that into the future.
Yeah, I look at things like in the future, and you and I have had conversations, around lunch and stuff about the same topic. And I look back and we were talking about, business brokers 30 years ago, and you look at that and it's like, okay, 30 years and longer ago, you're talking about a broker where they didn't really use the internet. They didn't have cell phones. They were using fax machines. I can't imagine doing what we do with all the moving parts on selling a business and being reliant on a fax machine and a landline. And if you leave for a meeting, you're not communicating with anybody until you get back from that meeting, and then you're faxing offers back and forth. And I remember the early days of me getting in the industry, getting these offers back and forth, and you're faxing it so many times you couldn't even read the contract. You'd have to rewrite it. But what technology has done, since I've been in the industry, has allowed us business brokers to be better at what we do, be able to handle more deals than we were able to handle before. And, I look at the next, 5 to 10 years as, even currently, I kind of feel like, in my opinion, we're kind of in the golden age of business brokerage. We've got this technology, we got the cell phones and the internet now, and there's a lot more technology coming out daily that is allowing us to, do better at our jobs and be more efficient in our jobs. And that's going to continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. I know a lot of people are really worried about AI. I don't know where AI is going to affect us, let's say 20 years down the road. But to me, the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to help us more than hurt us. And then you put on top of that we're in right now, we're seeing the greatest transfer of personal financial wealth the world has ever seen. It's just like all the stars are aligning in my eyes. I'm not saying that we're not going to have blips here and there, but overall, I feel like we're living in the golden age of business brokerage. I mean, what's your thought on that, Andy?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the access to money, the access to be able to raise capital without those ancient laws that we just changed at the SEC to let people sell a portion of their business. We have not seen the
Yeah.
implementation of those rules, and what how that's going to affect the marketplace, where people are able to raise capital by selling equities in their firm, and right now it's controlling interest. And I think buyers will be able to crowd fund or be able to get loans from fintech, and there'll be more predictive models of perhaps things as simply as a credit score that will get people loans. So I think the access to capital across the world, and I've already had conversations with some people out there wanting to do smaller loans. I think that's going to give people the ability to get into business, have their own businesses, and we're going to wind up helping them grow those businesses through acquisition. I think it is a golden age, and I think we're just barely scratching the surface. And I think it's super exciting. And I think a lot of things are going to happen. And like what has happened over the last 30 years, that has been, literally groundbreaking of opening up the markets, I think the next 30 years are going to be, equally or even more, uh, innovative. I think there's going to be innovations that are going to come out that'll make the marketplace much more efficient, make people who are maybe graduating from college or being able to buy one small business and grow it. I think there's all kinds of things like influencers being able to sell their practices. I think there's going to be, athletes being able to sell their likenesses and have marketing companies. I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things that are come on that business brokers will be able to help sell. And, I don't think AI, until you trust a robot to give a robot, a couple of $100,000 of your money or $1 million, whatever it is by then, um, I think there's still going to be a need for human interaction of somebody who knows the process, right? Whatever that
Right.
process is at that time. And I think that trust factor is still going to give us the ability to make money. Perhaps, like if we're able to do, because we have the ability to do 100 transactions a year instead of 10, yeah, maybe we'll make less money per transaction, or maybe, it'll go to a model where you're managing money like sort of like the investment advisors did. It's no longer by the trade. It's sort of by how much business you're handling. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I've heard you say many times about a Nasdaq type of thing, crowdfunding, that type of thing. You're really seeing that on the horizon in our industry. You think that's a big possibility?
Yeah, I
And
think so.
do you know how that
I
kind of
think
might work?
the BBF is the Nasdaq. I think the BBF could take that national, and I think I won't name names, but I think some organization is eventually going to embrace that and bring that out to everybody else, maybe in conjunction with the BBF. I certainly hope that happens. We have at least a couple decades worth of experience. We could certainly make it happen a lot faster. And then, as far as being able to crowdfund and sell equities, it just makes total sense, because people have been buying parts of company and for investments, and you're seeing a thirst for alternative investments, to the point where people are buying crazy things like these pictures and these cartoons and these and you saw like in Bitcoin and things that are not really tangible. And, I think if we finally get to the point where we say, hey, listen, you really like that pizza parlor down the street, you go there all the time, it's an amazing place, you love the owners, wouldn't you like to invest in it a little bit? And, that owner being able to say, yeah, if I had some investment capital, I would open up another location. And, so I think those things are going to be able to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And the laws are pointing that way for now, at least.
Yeah, sure.
I was really excited, Andy, that the law was passed that we could be involved in transactions like that, and I was excited that the SBA was looking like they were going to support something that from a financing standpoint. It's a shame that they kind of pulled the plug on that, but it is what it is. So currently, what challenges or opportunities and trends are you seeing in the industry currently? Anything in
So I
particular?
think, so like you said, we're in the golden age, right? So the last 3 years, especially here in Florida, have just been, crazy. I mean, obviously, we took a quick pause with COVID, and then we just kind of kept rolling along, and businesses are selling. I think it's interesting, right now, inventory is down, and I'm not talking that's a Transworld thing. It's across the board. We're seeing that inventory is down, and I'm not sure why it's down. It might be down because so many things have been selling, therefore the marketplace is becoming more efficient. As good businesses come up for sale, they're selling much more quickly than they used to. So that's one thing. Obviously, the money situation has gotten a lot more expensive over the last 12
Yeah.
months or so, maybe even less. So people are trying to digest that. So I feel like we're kind of going through this little bit of a digestion mode, like we ate so much over 2021 and 2022 that 2023 we have a little of indigestion. We're trying to digest the amount of businesses that sold, and the marketplace is kind of reeling, and the the money situation, the money being more expensive, certainly will bring down prices a little bit, and the sellers are still not accepting that price reduction. So I think that'll resolve over the next, you know, few months to maybe even to into next year. And I think we're going to be off to the races again into a, what could be a new normal.
Right, right. And see, in my opinion, I guess that's where I differ from you. And, we all have our kind of our own thought process. And this is something that I go around with brokers all the time. To me, the value of the businesses, and this is my opinion, the value of the businesses don't get affected because the interest rates are higher. It's just the buyer's buying potential is lower than it was
Yeah,
before. But
sure.
my opinion, the value of the business. But I know half the brokers feel your way and half the brokers I feel my way, and it's just kind of a perspective type of a situation. And that's what's cool when we have discussions like this, right, Andy? Is we all have our own opinion on what should be happening.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, one thing I like about doing deals in Florida is that it is a co-brokering state, and you get to see what other brokers are doing, good and bad. And I feel I feel that in the last 5 years or so, it seems like brokers across the state, at least in Florida, have picked up their game quite a bit. I'm seeing much better presentations with the businesses, and it just seems I don't know. It just seems like in the last 5 years, everybody's picking up their game more. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I do. I think the education has got out there to the point where people are better trained. The IBBA has gotten, very popular. The I think that younger, and I hate to say smarter, people have gotten into the business. I used to be considered young in this business, and I was the young whippersnapper, and some of the old timers, they were very set in their ways. Well, you can't be set in your ways anymore. You can't just do things the way you want to do them. Things are changing so quickly. So I'm very encouraged by the people that have gotten into this business. We certainly gotten more diverse. It's gotten
Yeah.
younger. More women have gotten involved. More minorities have gotten involved, which is great because they're bringing in those people. You're seeing people who are immigrating to this country, and we do a lot of E2 and L1 visas here in Florida. There are lots of E2 visas, and you're seeing immigrants come to this country because they're, like you think about the people who are immigrating 100 years ago. Those were the people who became entrepreneurs. Well, you see these people that are immigrating from different countries, where they were fleeing bad situations like Venezuela and perhaps uh, you know places in Europe and places where there were wars in other places where they want to come here and they want to create a better life for their families. And so those communities start building up, and people from those communities become business brokers to represent their own community. So I think that, the diversification of the business broker has also created like a lot of smart people coming in.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. I heard a statistic lately that I would go back when I first got in the industry. I could count on two hands how many women that I knew that were business brokers. And I heard a statistic lately that 30, it was from the IBBA, like 30% of all brokers right now are women. I was like, wow, that's impressive. That's fantastic.
That's a big number. I would not have, I might have picked in the 20s, but I don't think I would have bet in the high 20s. I would have said something,
Like below
maybe
20s.
20%, maybe 15%. But that's great. I mean, I think it's funny. You and I both know some women that got into this business because their dads were in this business.
Yeah.
And we know
Yeah.
some very smart people, so you're seeing the next generation of business brokers come from the old timers. You could just think of some of the people that are in this business that their dads were in this business or their grandfathers were in this business, and now they're in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you think brokers right now can prepare for the future, with AI and, all this technology coming on and the changes going on in business brokerage? What do you recommend business brokers do to stay on top?
Well, continue to get educated, right? Um, there's plenty of ways to get educated these days, whether it's through YouTube, whether it's through taking seminars or going to educational meetings. But Also, experiment. I mean, I think that's one thing that Transworld's been good at. We've always kind of experimented what marketing works, what marketing doesn't work. So, I always encourage people to experiment. I always say any marketing works. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of how well, right? If you did a
Yeah.
Super Bowl commercial and you spent, I don't know, what is it, $3 million, $5 million, $6 million for 30 seconds, it would work. I'm not sure you're getting your money back, but it would work. So I always tell people that everything works. It's just a matter of its effectiveness. So, just go out there and keep trying. And, I would highly encourage people that while we do this, while we learn the lessons of AI and data, is that we continue to share. Uh, you know, like you said earlier on, I do see this as a community that is still building. It's still building in its reputation. It's still, you go to 10 business owners, you ask them what a business broker is. I think, five would still fail that test. So they wouldn't even know that the service is available to them. I still think that even in Florida, a majority of businesses that sell are not handled by a business broker. They're either turned over to family, or they call their accountant or a realtor or a lawyer, or they try to do it themselves. I think there's still a lot of upside as a community, as our community, to teach people why they want to use a business broker, uh, why, as a business broker, we should all continue to cooperate with each other. And if we could all learn the lessons of continuing to get that word out, and whether that's through AI or data or getting smarter about matching people up, I think we could all make a lot more money.
I do too. And, I think the big thing you're talking about is cooperation. And, let's put co brokering aside for a minute because that's a whole nother topic, but just cooperating with each other and, educating each other and working together on best practices is good for the whole industry. I mean, you said it earlier, Andy, and I really believe this. I don't think there is enough business brokers out there. They handle the current amount of work or businesses that need to sell or are going to be selling in the next few years. So I don't look at it as I don't look at it as a threat. I don't look at other brokers as a threat. I feel like we need more of us out there, or at least more qualified, knowledgeable brokers out there. And we got to be helping each other, and we got to be helping those that are newer in the industry, help them up the ladder, and and bring more people into the industry. And we shouldn't be having this thing of like we're working in scarcity and holding everything close to our chest, because it just it doesn't it hurts the whole industry. And I think that's what's great about our industry, especially Main Street business brokerage. You go to these BBF conferences or the IBBA conferences, and everybody's so willing to share information and knowledge with each other. And I think that that's what's helped. One of the reasons that helped elevate our industry over the years is that we're just kind of helping each other along. And I think that's fantastic.
Agreed.
As far as
Agreed.
marketing and advertising, you brought the marketing and advertising. It's funny. Business brokers are always not all business brokers, but the question always comes up is, how do you market for your listings? How do you market for your listings? And I think brokers are looking for that magic bullet, that one thing that is going to drive all those potential sellers to them. And I don't think there's a magic bullet. It's just doing a number of things consistently is the key.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's no magic bullet in marketing. It's everything. But the tools that are available now are just crazy, right? Social media, for instance, has just changed the game of being able to get yourself out there uh, for free, basically. I mean, obviously, you have to pay for certain platforms, and you have to pay for ads and things like that. But
Mhm.
for the most part, you could put out content for free, and and whether these new content things are always coming along, like TikTok and Snapchat, and whether or not you're going to be able to leverage that for business. But some people have made a fortune on TikTok, and fortunes will be ruined as we've seen that in business where people figured out the Google algorithm, and then 6 months later they're out of business because you know Google changed the algorithm. I think, like you said, you have to be well balanced. You have to
Mhm.
do a lot of things and you have to do them consistently. And you and I know that the number one way to get business in this industry is referral. And the only
Yes.
way you're going to get referrals is you're going to be a trusted advisor, and people are going to know what you do and trust you, and you're going to get your fair share of business. Until then, if you're a newbie and you're listening to this, you're going to have to bootstrap it. You're going to have to join multiple, networking groups. You're going to have to go out there and knock on doors and post letters, and send out letters and postcards, and advertise in certain traditional ways until you get going. And like, you and I know, Jim, we know several people that are in this business that don't advertise anymore. They don't need
Right.
to. They're
Yep.
sought after. And so that's where you eventually want to get in this business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The mention of the Google is exactly right. Google can change their algorithm like that, and you could go from number one to, number 10 overnight. You spend a lot of money with the SEO, you spend a lot of time, and overnight it just dries up. And whether you're doing Google or you're doing Google Ads or cold calling or postcards and sending out letters, that's all cold leads that are coming in. Somebody's calling in, they don't know who you are. You're spending half your time talking about your background and da 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 da, where lead comes in through a referral, and somebody that they know and they trust is saying, hey, use this person to sell your business. That comes with a ton of weight. And I think that brokers nowadays, you talk about marketing and advertising, and they're just kind of like, and then you mention something about internet, and they're like, oh, and their eyes light up, like internet's everything, internet's everything, internet's everything. And it's the shiny button, and everybody's perked up. How do I do this on this? And how do I do that? And at the end of the day, I mean, social media is great, but I look at not social media, but the internet in general. For me personally, I look at the internet, whether it's, my website and my reviews online, to my social media, to that type of stuff, is that it's more of, I'm not really trying to get leads that way. My leads are coming in through referral sources, but then if they Google me, then they're like, yeah, okay. And then they're learning a little bit more about me, and then they feel more comfortable. It's more of a, reassurance policy than it is a marketing policy. Cause I'm referrals is where it's at. Any experienced, seasoned, successful business broker knows referrals is where it's at. And
Absolutely.
those are usually the best leads you're going to get anyways, instead
Yeah.
of the person that's owned the business for 6 months and is losing money. And, you know, Um, so, I got a question for you because this has been a hot topic lately. What do you think about brokers getting into specializing in an industry versus being a general business broker?
So we've certainly seen some firms that are out there that have specialized in things. I certainly, I used to specialize in eyewear, like eyeglass stores, and
I didn't
in my
know
first
that.
couple
Did
of
you
years in this
really?
business, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
funny, and in my first couple of years, I sold like a dozen businesses in that industry, and I spoke at conferences and I wrote articles, and it was a lot of fun. I was in the Tom West book for years, and then begged out because I was like, I don't sell them anymore. So it was great, but then the big chains came in, and then the independent operators were kind of being pushed out of the business. Actually, it's come back. Independent operators are back. So so I think it just increases your risk as a business owner. Like, if you're not, if you cut down your possible customers to a certain vertical, uh, I I think it could be hard. I always tell people that they always worry about whether or not, have you sold my type of business before? And I said, well, do you think it matters if a heart surgeon has ever operated on someone who had blue eyes or brown eyes or blonde hair? It's like, it's about the heart operation. They know how to do the heart operation. for us, that's what we're doing. We know how to sell a business. It doesn't really matter what they do. Yes,
Hmm.
could we know some of the industry buyers perhaps and connect it a little bit faster? But these days, again, with the internet, with the tools like PitchBook, with the tools, the research tools, you're able to go out there and find out who's buying pretty quickly. So you can educate yourself out to almost any kind of company. So other than, having a good feeling at the first meeting that someone knows exactly what you're doing in your business, I think um, that it's kind of unnecessary, right? I there's nothing wrong with if that's what you want to do and you feel comfortable about it. And we've seen some brokers where they specialize in the education space, where they specialize in the healthcare space. We had dental practice brokers here in Broward County. That's all they did was dental practices. I've seen insurance guys. That's all they do is insurance. Great until that business decides it's going to take a pause, or the big player got so big that there's no little fish in the sea anymore.
Yeah,
You're going to have
kind of
to
like what you were
change.
talking about with the eyeglassware.
Yeah.
It
So
happened to you. Hmm. So, what advice do you give to new Transworld agents or agents in general to be chances of being successful in the first year or two in practice?
it comes down to hard work. I always tell people not to have paralysis by analysis, right? So if
Hmm.
you do come in and you're like, I'm going to specialize in one industry and I'm going to wait until my LinkedIn's perfect and I'm going to get my CBI the first day and I'm going to, not that any of those things are bad, right?
Right.
You
They're all
need to
good.
do that
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
way. But I think you have to dive in, and you have to dive in with both feet and you have to work extremely hard. One of my brokers in Virginia, Rupesh, says, when somebody joins, he says, if they work 17 hours a day, 7 days a week for 90 days, he goes, I'll show you someone that's probably going to be successful in this business. It's like that initial, like, you got to go out there and just hit the ground running and try to, get some engagements and hopefully sell a few businesses in your first year, so you feel good about yourself and so you
Right.
have the ability to stay. So I this is a full-time job. I tell people that all the time, and I don't care what 8 hours a day you're going to work at it. If you have kids or if you're doing something else, if you want to work at night, you want to work in the morning, yes, there might be some flexibility in that, but you have to put the time and the work in. So it's just comes down to, are you going to work hard?
Right. Right. I've been in this industry for nearly 25 years, and I got into this industry. I did very, very well my first year. And I think the reason I did very well my first year, Andy, is because I worked for a residential real estate company. I did not know what I did not know. Like, I was completely clueless. I just was like, I want to sell businesses, and the real estate company said, "Well, why don't you do it now?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it now." And I just went out there, and I was being honest and ethical, and I was using common sense, and I'd owned businesses before, and I was putting things together. But I think sometimes brokers come in, and I think look, I am, anybody that knows me and anybody that has listened to me talk knows that how important I feel education is. I mean, educating yourself is paramount, is so important. You just got to keep educating yourself. But I think new brokers sometimes get in the industry and they get exposed to people that are already in the industry and how knowledgeable they are. They get exposed to these conferences and how much information that they don't know, that they're afraid to just jump in and get started. And you can take all the education that you can out there, which I encourage everybody to do. It's going to make you a better broker. But you if you wait until you know everything, you're never going to be a business broker, because I don't know everything, and I've been
Yeah,
doing it for nearly
I was about to
25
say,
years.
I don't
It's an
know
always
everything either.
learning experience. I'm sorry.
I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't know everything either. And I'm, in it for almost 30 years. You know, I, again, like you said, it's you can't have paralysis by analysis. And you brought up a good point. Like if you don't have a mentor, you
Yeah.
you should try to get one. I mean, it's certainly if you're going to be a new broker in this business, it's hard to work by yourself. I think that would be very difficult. And whether you join a small firm, a big firm, a franchise, I think you should probably do that. Join one of them, so you have someone that's mentoring you, that's so you have someone that you could bounce ideas off of. So two heads are always better than one in these deals. And again, that they go back to co-brokerage. You're not alone in these deals. And most of the large M&A firms do not allow an engagement to be handled by one person. It's a team, and I
Hmm.
think they do that for a reason. And so when we co-broke, and there's people who own companies, and there's several people in those companies, you do have a team. And even at the BBF, we have a team. We've certainly called each other up for advice and said, I've got this deal, what do I do with it? And we give that advice because we want to see these deals go through. Again, it's a good thing for business owners to be able to trade their businesses and get those funds liquidated so they can invest them or move on to something else or retire. So, um, yeah, I think you brought up a good point.
The so Andy, you have a lot of agents that work there at Transworld, and you've got a good amount of top tier business brokers out there that are just crushing it. What do you feel like are the things that separate the a good solid business broker that does pretty good and they're knowledgeable and they know what they're doing versus that person that just takes it to a completely different level? What are the characteristics, or what are they doing differently, do you think?
Um, I think they're problem solvers, right? So I think there are two things you're going to need to do. You're going to need to solve problems, and you're going to need to convince people to do things.
Hmm.
And so without those two skills, uh, and the people who do crush it are able to do those two things very well. They're able to solve problems when an issue comes up, and they're able to convince people to do things that don't want to do things, whether the landlord doesn't want to, or, transfer the lease, whether the bank doesn't want to lend, whether the buyer doesn't want to move forward unless they see this, or this, whether the sellers decides that they're not getting enough money because they went to a cocktail party last night and somebody told them they should be getting more money. All these things will slow down your deal or kill your deal. And so
Hmm.
what you need to do is you need to be able to solve those two problems. And then the other thing that really successful business brokers do, and I'll give Mike Shea a shout, you answer your phone. Like
Yeah.
you're available, right? And answering your phone might be antiquated. You answer your texts, or you answer your emails, or you don't you're able to be almost 24/7. That there's plenty of questions answer on the weekends, and especially a seller, they feel like this is the biggest decision they've ever made, number one financial transaction of their lives. Same with the buyer. You're going to have to be there for them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Andy, is there anything else that you want to let business brokers know out there? Beginning, intermediate, advanced business brokers. I mean, a lot of people want to hear from you. You carry a big microphone.
Thanks. Listen, this is a wonderful industry. I would highly encourage people to continue to uh, cooperate. We need to make buying and selling a business much more efficient. And I think we could all get there if we continue to work together. I will also tell people that the other secret of being successful in this business is to give back to your community, whether that's inside of your own industry uh, or outside of the industry in your own community. I think it's you know I think that's a way to build trust. I think it's a way to build trust for our industry and for people to, consider using a business broker. So the more business brokers that go out there and give back to their communities, I think that's going to help us greatly. So those are the two things I would leave with.
You know, Andy, I don't think there's anybody that's given more back to this industry or to this community than you. You've done a tremendous amount, and you know, I personally want to thank you for that, Andy. I really admire you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your
Well,
friendship.
I appreciate your friendship. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Andy. And those of you guys who are watching the video, you know, please subscribe, please like, please feel free to comment. And until next time, I'll see you later.